The coffee was still warm when Laura Bennett left her parents' house in Kenai, Alaska, population 7,421, February 1976. Arrived with an unexpected blizzard, cold winds from Cook Inlet whipping through the log cabins along the road leading to Homer. At 5:40 p.m., the Bennetts' neighbor Raymond Cole saw Laura's turquoise Jeep Wagoneer pull away from the snow-covered driveway, headlights still on amid the whiteout haze. The 32-year-old elementary school teacher was on her way back to Homer after a weekend visiting her parents, carrying a few packets of letters and baked goods for her students. An hour later, the storm intensified, snow thick enough to erase every tire track on the Sterling Highway. What happened that snowy night would haunt the Homer community for 3 decades afterward. Before diving deeper into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. February 1976. Winter in Alaska entered its harshest phase. On the Kenai Peninsula, winds from Cook Inlet swept in, lashing through the pine forests, and the road connecting Kenai to the coastal town of Homer, covered in snow over a meter thick. Locals were accustomed to long winters and sudden blizzards, but that year, the dry, deep cold made everything slow down. Laura Bennett, 29 years old, an elementary school teacher, was packing her bags at her parents' house in Kenai after a few days off. She was a petite woman, described by colleagues as patient, calm, and rarely complaining. Her marriage to Thomas Bennett, a mechanic at the Homer oil yard, had been smooth for over 6 years. That morning, Laura woke up early, checked the weather forecast, heard about a blizzard moving south, but still decided to hit the road. She folded her fleece jacket, packed a few souvenirs for her students, and told her mother she would be home in Homer before dark. Her mother saw her off at the door, reminding her to drive slowly through the Nilchik Pass because the wind often shifted directions. The silver-gray Jeep Wagoneer rolled away from the icy slope, leaving a thin trail of smoke in the frigid air. On the way, Laura stopped for gas at a station near Kasilof, where the attendant remembered her asking for directions to the Beluga Forest area because she was afraid of getting lost in the blinding snow. By early afternoon, the snow grew so heavy that many vehicles turned back, but the Jeep kept moving south. After leaving the gas station, Laura vanished from all contact. That evening, Homer was engulfed in a fierce storm. Thomas, home alone, thought his wife might stay an extra night in Kenai, so he didn't call right away. By midnight, he checked the phone, no messages, no signal. The next morning, as the sky just began to lighten, Thomas brewed coffee, waited a bit longer, then called his mother-in-law to ask if Laura had returned there. The answer was no. No one knew what time she had left Kenai. No one had seen the Jeep on the road. Thomas drove to the gas station at the edge of town, asked the attendant on duty, but no one remembered clearly. He went home, called hospitals in the area, then traffic patrol stations along the Sterling Highway. No place recorded an accident or a woman matching the description. By nearly 9 a.m., Thomas went straight to the Homer police station, walked up to the duty desk, and said, "My wife is missing. She left Kenai yesterday and hasn't come home." The duty officer looked up, momentarily surprised by the man's weary appearance and face pale from the cold. He took down the information, passed the report to his superior, then invited Thomas to wait in the small room next door. Less than 10 minutes later, Police Chief Harold Dempsey entered, removing his gloves and brushing snow off his thick coat. Dempsey was a middle-aged, reserved man who had worked in the Alaska State Troopers before taking this position in Homer. He was used to missing persons cases in harsh weather, but rarely one reported so late. He sat down across from him, his voice calm but firm. "Tell me from the beginning, every detail you remember." Thomas recounted it briefly and clearly. Laura left Kenai yesterday morning, driving the silver-gray Jeep Wagoneer, planning to be home by evening. She had called him around noon, saying everything was fine, then no further contact. Dempsey asked more. "Was she alone? Any plans to stop anywhere?" Thomas shook his head. "No, she wanted to get home early." When asked why he waited until morning to report, he replied, "I thought she might be stuck somewhere because of the storm, or staying overnight in Kenai." Dempsey nodded without comment. He began taking careful notes: full name, age, height, identifying features, clothing, luggage, license plate. He called patrol stations along the Sterling Highway to check for accidents, stuck vehicles, or pedestrians spotted overnight. All negative. He contacted the Kenai police office for traffic accident reports in the past 24 hours. Nothing. Dempsey returned to his desk, opened the highway map, marked Laura's route: Kenai, Kasaloff, Ninilchik, Homer. He circled dangerous terrain areas, often hit by shifting winds, especially around Beluga Lake, where several vehicles slid off the road each year. Experience told him if Laura had an incident, it was likely stuck on that stretch. He called in the department's rapid response team, 3 officers, 2 rescue workers, and a civilian pilot. Temperature was minus 32 degrees, snow heavy, but visibility improving. Dempsey ordered preparation of 2 snowmobiles, a helicopter, radios, maps, and survival gear. He also had communications issue a local radio alert, searching for a 29-year-old woman, brown hair, driving a silver-gray Jeep Wagoneer, missing between Kenai and Homer. While everyone prepared urgently, Thomas sat in the waiting room, hands clenched around a coffee cup he didn't drink. He asked if he could join the search party, but Dempsey refused, saying they needed to keep phone lines open in case Laura called home. As the clock struck 9:50 a.m., the snow stopped falling, and the first dim light shone on the white ice. That was the signal to begin the official search. Dempsey's team left Homer just before 10 a.m., carrying slim hope that Laura was just stuck somewhere in the snowy mountains. The radio antenna transmitted steadily as the snowmobile convoy rolled along the silent Sterling Highway. High above, the civilian Piper started up, propellers stirring the cold mist. The team split into 2 directions, one group scanning from Homer northward, the other starting from Kenai, planning to meet at the intersection between Ninilchik and Beluga Lake. He knew if Laura had an accident, it was likely along this winding stretch, where the terrain was steep and crosswinds could push vehicles off the edge. Over the internal radio, Dempsey's voice was brief: maintain distance, scan each section, watch for snow depressions. The vehicles moved slowly, observing both sides of the road. By noon, the northern team reported a discovery: a metallic glint reflecting light under thick snow near mile 64. The civilian pilot from above confirmed a shape resembling a Jeep roof. The search team immediately stopped, using shovels to clear the snow. When the glass appeared, they clearly saw it was the silver-gray Jeep Wagoneer, license plate Homer 2179. Matching the file description. The vehicle lay tilted on the road's edge, buried up to half its body. Snow covered the roof, but no signs of heavy impact or long skid, just as if someone had stopped and walked away. He ordered members not to step further into the area around the vehicle to preserve the scene. They staked a 10-meter radius, strung red nylon cord as a temporary boundary. Dempsey photographed the entire scene with a Polaroid camera, front of the vehicle, wheel positions, interior condition, distance to the road edge. Then he halted all movement to wait for the Kenai forensics team. Before leaving, he noted on a tag in bold print: Laura Bennett's vehicle, found along Sterling Highway, mile 64. No occupant, no signs of theft. Scene temporarily secured. Light snow continued as the team returned to Homer to report. Over the radio, Dempsey's voice was subdued. Phase 1, vehicle located. Driver not present. No evidence of accident. Victim's movement direction undetermined. That was his first conclusion in the Laura Bennett missing person file. Recorded late afternoon on February 13, 1976. That evening, as the search team returned to the Homer police station with scene photos, Harold Dempsey moved to the next phase investigation. He summoned Thomas Bennett to headquarters for an official statement. Thomas arrived on time, still in his thick brown coat, face gaunt from lack of sleep, but voice steady. Dempsey asked details about Laura's trip. Last contact time, their relationship, and recent marriage situation. Thomas answered clearly, without confusion. We had no issues. She was just visiting her parents for a few days. Laura was cautious. She knew how to drive in snow. He recounted the last call, around noon the day she left Kenai, when Laura said she was on the road and the wind was picking up. After that, he couldn't reach her. When asked why he didn't report that night, Thomas said he believed she might have stopped to wait out the storm somewhere. Dempsey noted, statement calm, no contradictions, no unusual stress. However, he noticed Thomas said little about emotions. Asked nothing more about the search, just confirmed he left everything to police. The next morning, Dempsey began gathering information from Laura's acquaintances. Colleagues at Homer Elementary said she was a dedicated teacher, rarely shared personal matters. However, a close friend recounted that during her time off in Kenai, Laura had mentioned wanting to leave Alaska for Seattle, where she had attended college. She said Homer's climate was too harsh, and she wanted a different job farther south. This information led Dempsey to note the possibility of voluntary departure, though no clear evidence yet. He asked about the couple's relationship. All said they were harmonious. No heard arguments. Laura's parents confirmed their daughter had said she might leave here in a few years, but never mentioned going immediately. At noon, Dempsey contacted gas stations and eateries along the road. At one near Ninilchik, staff said they saw a woman matching Laura's description. That afternoon she vanished. The woman stopped for gas. Then a large dark green truck pulled up right after. The driver was a man, brown hair, leather jacket. The two seemed to talk briefly, then parted. The attendant remembered clearly because the truck driver came back to ask directions to Homer. Dempsey requested a detailed description, noting truck bore the logo of domestic transport company Arctic Haul, with peeling paint on the door. He contacted the company office, requesting the list of drivers on the Kenai-Homer route on February 12. Results showed one match: Roger Hale, 32 years old, contract driver previously cited for speeding on this route the previous summer. Dempsey compared the gathered information. Laura's Jeep was near mile 64, matching the route Hale reported in his transport schedule that day. Additionally, the gas station attendant confirmed the dark green truck headed toward Homer right after Laura left. He marked Roger Hale's name on the initial suspect list and requested the Kenai office verify his residence, work times, and send a telegram requiring Hale to appear at Homer headquarters the next morning for questioning. That afternoon, Dempsey continued checking those who might have seen the Jeep before it was buried in snow. One witness, a state road patrol driver, said he saw vehicle lights on by the roadside when passing the area around early evening. He thought it was broken down and intended to stop, but the storm was too fierce, so he only glanced. Now knowing about the missing person, he confirmed the lights were on, meaning no electrical failure, and saw no one nearby. Dempsey evaluated this as key, because if the vehicle was operational, Laura might have been safe when she stopped. The question was why she left the vehicle in such harsh weather. By day's end, all statements were compiled in a 3-page report. The potential suspect section listed only one name: Roger Hale. Dempsey stayed late, reviewing the map, marking the Jeep discovery site and witness-cited dark green truck locations. Distance between the 2 points was just over 2 miles. He concluded temporarily need to clarify Hale's role and timing through this stretch. For objectivity, Dempsey added a final comment to the report. Do not rule out accident or voluntary departure. However, the presence of a second vehicle at the scene area is a factor requiring verification. As he left the office that night, snow began falling again, blurring the streetlights outside. On Dempsey's desk, the Laura Bennett missing person file was set apart, with a yellow sheet on top bearing handwritten words, "Locate and question Roger Hale, top priority." The next morning, Roger Hale arrived at the Homer Police Department on time as requested. He was a man in his early 30s, burly build, tanned face of a long-haul driver, wearing a thick jacket with the Arctic Haul logo. Harold Dempsey greeted briefly, invited him to sit in the small interrogation room. Hale's voice was hoarse, mixed with smells of tobacco and engine oil. When asked about February 12th, he recounted fluently, "I was hauling cargo to Homer. On the way, near Ninilchik, I saw a Jeep parked on the roadside, headlights still on. I stopped thinking someone was in trouble. Turns out the engine just stalled from the cold. I helped restart it. She thanked me and drove off ahead. Dempsey requested a description of the woman. Hale said she had brown hair, green coat, looked tired, and a bit scared from the strong wind. He insisted he didn't know her name or destination, just remembered the Homer plate. Dempsey took notes, asked a few more. Did you touch the vehicle? Drive with her any distance? Hale shook his head, said he only opened the hood, adjusted the battery cables, then left in under 5 minutes. When asked if anyone else was with him, he said no. The road was completely empty. Dempsey maintained a neutral demeanor. He noted, Hale answered naturally, no mixed details, but still requested verification of his travel log. According to the company's logbook, Hale's truck left Anchorage early morning February 12, arrived Homer late that day, and delivered cargo at 8 p.m. on schedule. The company confirmed via receipt. This left Dempsey unable to conclude anything beyond Hale being in the area where Laura vanished. However, he noted a small detail from the gas station attendant. The truck driver returned to ask directions to Homer, meaning Hale stopped twice near the same spot. He wrote in his notebook, "Need to verify actual route via odometer." The forensics team was ordered to inspect Hale's truck. The search lasted over 2 hours. Inside the cab, they found clothes, toolbox, maps, and typical long-haul driver items. No blood traces, no strange hairs, no women's belongings. In the cargo bed, goods still sealed, police photographed, sealed floor samples, preliminary tests negative. Dempsey reviewed the report, noted no signs of crime. However, he still required Hale to remain in Homer temporarily until full route verification was complete. In the second meeting, Dempsey asked for more details about the conversation between Hale and Laura. He recounted, "She asked how far it was to Homer. I said about over 40 miles. She smiled, said she wanted to get home before dark." When Dempsey asked for his impression, Hale said she seemed anxious and cold, but not scared. The police chief observed his demeanor, seeing no signs of evasion, but still noted how Hale kept lighting cigarettes and glancing at his watch. He ended the session with a reminder, "If you remember anything else, contact us immediately." Hale nodded, signed the statement, and left the station. That afternoon, Dempsey called Thomas Bennett back to supplement his statement. When asked about Roger Hale, Thomas immediately replied that he knew the man. "He used to deliver to my shop. Once he came to our house, Laura talked to him on the porch. He was a bit flirtatious. I didn't like it." Dempsey asked what flirtatious meant specifically. Thomas said Hale often joked, asked personal questions, once called Laura pretty teacher. He said after that, Laura avoided meeting him again. Dempsey noted, husband believes Hale was interested in wife, possible jealousy. However, he understood this type of information was only for reference, not evidence. For cross-verification, Dempsey asked Laura's parents and friends. No one knew details about any connection between her and Hale. Only one colleague vaguely remembered Laura mentioning a driver who often delivered to Thomas's shop. That was enough to keep Hale under surveillance. For the following week, police monitored Hale's movements, checked phone records, work schedule, and close associates. Everything was normal. He lived alone in a rented house in Kenai. No prior convictions, no violent behavior. Company rated him as punctual and quiet. Dempsey still felt something was off. He had Hale's truck route re-examined using handwritten log data. Comparing departure from Anchorage and arrival in Homer, results matched, with less than half an hour discrepancy. Given poor road conditions, this margin was acceptable. No indication he lingered near the Jeep discovery site longer than stated. Scene photos also showed no truck tire marks beyond the Jeeps. 1 week later, Dempsey reported preliminary investigation results, no physical evidence, no direct witnesses, no signs of crime. He could not charge Roger Hale based solely on timing coincidence. However, with the case lacking clear direction, Hale's name remained on the open suspect list. In the file, Dempsey's final line in bold, no direct evidence. Continue monitoring. Then he closed the folder and placed it beside the photo of the Jeep buried in snow. Outside the window, the Alaska sky darkened, snow beginning to fall again, covering the town in a thick white layer, as if erasing any remaining traces of the woman who vanished on that road. On February 20th, 1976, nearly a week after discovering the Jeep buried in snow, Dempsey had the vehicle towed to the Homer Police Department inspection bay. It was transported on a flatbed trailer, covered with tarps, to avoid altering evidence. That morning, light snow still fell, winds from Kakimak Bay making everything bitterly cold. The state forensics team from Anchorage had arrived, consisting of 2 people, evidence analyst Raymond Keller and technical photographer Gwen Moore. They began examining every detail in the temporarily heated garage. When the last snow was washed from the body, the entire surface remained intact. No scratches, no impact marks, indicating an accident. The driver's door opened easily, lock functional. Keller bent down to the driver's floor and discovered a dark streak, about 12 centimeters long, stuck to the rubber mat under the accelerator. He shone a light, noting the color wasn't engine oil, but had a faint reddish-brown tint. Keller carefully sampled it, noting dried liquid suspected blood, unconfirmed. Dempsey stood nearby watching, saying nothing, just nodding slightly. Next, the forensics team used graphite powder and adhesive strips to lift fingerprints inside the cabin. On the inner passenger door handle, they found one clear print, different from Laura Bennett's and Thomas Bennett's on file. The print did not match anyone in the Alaska State Criminal Database at the time. Keller numbered and stored the lift, noting unidentified fingerprint, possible third party. Additionally, they found a few faint smudges on the rearview mirror and steering wheel, but too shallow for analysis. In the trunk, they discovered a cloth bag containing documents, a notebook, and a few personal items. Everything was dry, undisturbed. However, in the console between the seats, Keller found a long dark brown hair stuck to the leather shift boot. He used tweezers to remove it, placed it in a preservation bag, noting hair strand, origin unconfirmed. With 1976 technology, DNA identification was impossible, so the sample was sealed for storage in the evidence locker. Dempsey walked around the vehicle one last time, observing meticulously. He noticed the rear door slightly ajar, lock intact, exterior handprints faint. No drag marks, no second set of tire tracks beyond the Jeep's. Everything indicated one person stopped, opened the door, and left on foot, or was picked up by someone. But heavy snow all night had completely covered any traces. Keller checked the electrical system and engine. Battery weak but functional. Engine started after a few attempts, confirming no mechanical failure. Heater was off, windows slightly open, possibly for ventilation, when stopped. On the back seat, Laura's thick coat and wool scarf remained in place, as if she didn't intend to be outside long. The coffee cup in the holder was completely frozen, forming a cloudy ice layer over the faint brown stain. Gwen Moore photographed every detail, flash reflecting off the cold ice, making the silent room even more eerie. By afternoon, the team completed documentation and began the preliminary report. Items were clearly listed: 1. No signs of collision or forced entry. 2. No items missing. 3. Dark streak suspected blood, but insufficient quantity for testing. 4. Unidentified fingerprint on passenger door handle. 5. No physical evidence of a second person at the scene when vehicle was abandoned. The report was sent to the Kenai District Attorney's Office with temporary assessment. No criminal act determined. High likelihood driver left vehicle due to weather or personal incident. Dempsey read the report multiple times. The cold lines did not reassure him. 20 years in the field told him something was wrong. But every number, every trace was silent. He added a private note: do not rule out external interference, retain all samples, may be needed later. Still, publicly and to superiors, he had to issue the official conclusion. The Laura Bennett missing person case had no evidence of criminal involvement. The next day, the Jeep was moved to the department's storage lot, covered with thick tarps, and filed under Case 76 HR 214. Samples were placed in sealed envelopes, stored in the safe with detailed records. On the report's final page, Dempsey signed, dated and concluded, preliminary report. Victim likely met with weather-related incident. Outside the window, snow began falling again. Light flakes like cold ash, drifting over Homer, slowly erasing one more missing person case in an Alaska winter. 3 days after completing the Jeep examination, weather in Homer eased slightly. Winds calmed, snow melted into patches on the road, allowing Dempsey to expand the search radius another 10 miles around mile 64, the Jeep discovery site. He requested the county rescue team and civil defense join, bringing metal detectors, search dogs, and detailed topographic maps from the Department of Transportation. The team split into 3 small groups, sweeping both sides of the road and the low forest nearby. Temperature remained below -20 degrees, snow crusted hard, making the search slow and exhausting. On the second afternoon, around 2 p.m., Civil Defense member Howard Greeley radioed a suspicious object about 400 meters from the road. When the team arrived, they saw something protruding from the snow, just a corner of dark leather, hardened by cold. Clearing the surrounding snow, they identified a woman's brown glove, soft leather, fairly new, small size. About 1 meter away, snow covered a small leather purse, handbag style, brass zipper tarnished. Dempsey ordered the scene preserved, photographed, then carefully dug around with an aluminum shovel. The purse was intact, only slightly damp at the edges. He used gloved hands to open the zipper. Inside were a pen, a lipstick, a small mirror, and a folded piece of paper. The paper was water-stained, written in blue ballpoint pen, slanted right, short message. I'm afraid of him. Dempsey read it repeatedly, silently. He asked those around if anyone recognized Laura Bennett's handwriting, but no one was certain. He placed the paper in a preservation bag, noting evidence recovered at coordinates 59°40 in mile 65, 0.4 miles from Jeep location. The glove and purse were sealed separately. The surrounding area was then scanned further, but yielded nothing else. No footprints, no additional items, no fabric scraps. Back at headquarters, Dempsey had close-up photos taken of the evidence. The glove matched Thomas's statement description. Laura had a pair of brown leather gloves her mother gave her. She always wore them driving in winter. However, he refrained from concluding, as nothing proved it belonged to the victim. Keller, the forensic specialist, examined the items, confirming no clear fingerprints on the purse exterior, and the handwritten note could not be ink-dated with then-current technology. He only assessed handwriting hurried, somewhat shaky, possibly written under stress. Dempsey ordered the envelope preserved and filed separately, marked with new designation, B7, supplemental evidence. That evening, in his office, Dempsey reread the photocopy of Orpy that featured him. He wondered who him was, the husband, an acquaintance, or a stranger on the road. In the investigation file, no one had mentioned Laura fearing anything beyond disliking harsh weather. But the short message, despite its brevity, suggested clear panic, starkly different from the calm elementary teacher everyone described. He added a private note in his duty log. Hypothesis: victim may have faced personal conflict before disappearance. Need to check domestic violence or private disputes. The next morning, Dempsey invited Thomas to examine the evidence. When he placed the glove and purse on the table, Thomas stared for a long time, then said quietly, "Yes, Laura's. I recognized the small stitch on the glove edge. She tore it once, and sewed it herself." Dempsey asked if he knew the paper. Thomas frowned. "No, I've never seen it. Laura never wrote me handwritten notes." He closely observed the reaction. Thomas's voice remained calm, only his hands clasped tightly. When asked if they had any recent conflicts, Thomas replied, "No, she was just a bit down about work, not with me." Dempsey said nothing more, only noted evidence, possibly victims, paper origin unconfirmed. That same day, Keller used ultraviolet light on the paper to check for smudged ink or erased writing, but results were negative. No new details emerged. The weekend forensics report concluded, insufficient basis to link paper directly to disappearance, possibly personal item dropped earlier. However, Dempsey did not believe it was coincidence. He felt the purse's location, just a few hundred meters from the vehicle, could not appear randomly in such a desolate, snowy area. He updated the summary report, adding assessment, possibility of personal conflict or violence in close relationship should be considered. No confirming evidence. In the brief weekend meeting, when a colleague asked if they should release the paper's details to local media, Dempsey shook his head. Not yet. We need to understand its meaning before someone twists it. When everyone left, he stayed alone, looking at the map spread before him. From the Jeep's position, he drew a straight line to the purse discovery site, then marked a small circle around the steep forested area beside the road, where snow remained thick and untouched. In his mind, Laura Bennett's disappearance was no longer a weather incident. It began taking the shape of something else, deeper, darker, something the short message seemed to be the last remaining whisper of. By mid-March 1976, snow began melting along the Sterling Highway. Patchy ice revealed gray pavement, and the search for Laura Bennett had nearly become a desperate effort. For 3 straight weeks, rescue teams coordinated with Kenai County Police had swept the entire area within a 10-mile radius of the Jeep site, using search dogs and metal detectors, but found no further traces. No body, no new items, no additional witnesses. Daily reports ended with the same dry sentence: no new discoveries. Dempsey, though keeping the investigation team active another week, had to admit time and weather had erased any remaining chances. On April 2nd, in a meeting with the county prosecutor's office, the case was officially reclassified as missing, presumed dead due to natural causes. The basis was extreme weather conditions, rugged terrain, and the absence of clear criminal signs. Roger Hale, the former primary suspect, was cleared from the suspect list after final checks confirmed his route fully matched the company's schedule. The prosecutor agreed there was no evidence for charges, and the surveillance order on Hale was lifted that week. He left Homer, returning to his regular driving job, leaving no further trace in police records. Thomas Bennett, the husband, was officially notified of the investigation results. In the record, he was noted as direct family contact not suspected. A few weeks later, per life insurance procedure, he filed a claim for the $50,000 death benefit, a significant sum at the time. After verification, the company approved payment based on the police conclusion of likely environmental death. Thomas left Homer briefly, returning to Kenai with his wife's family for a small memorial. Though there was no body or formal funeral, the local Homer News ran a short notice on page 4. Laura Bennett, elementary teacher, presumed dead in February blizzard. Police close case after weeks of fruitless search. In the police chief's office, Dempsey signed the final report with a heavy feeling. File number 76, HR 214, was closed. Clipped with copies of forensic reports and statements. The gray cover bore a red stamp, archived. He placed it in the second drawer of the cold case cabinet, among dozens of other winter cases that year. On paper, the Laura Bennett disappearance was officially over. But in his personal notebook, Dempsey kept a separate page for thoughts he couldn't include in the file. Scene too neat. Car unlocked. Lights on, purse and glove, not far away, as if placed. No struggle signs, but too few footprints for the snowfall. Feels staged. He underlined staged 3 times, then closed the notebook. In the final days of the search, he had returned alone to mile 64. Snow had partially melted, exposing hard ice mixed with gravel. He stood there nearly an hour, observing the terrain, narrow road, one side sloping to forest, the other a steep snow wall. If Laura left the vehicle for help, she could only follow the main road, no other paths. So why did rescue teams find no sign of her along the road? Dempsey knew some disappearances truly had no answers, but instinct told him this wasn't one. However, he couldn't write instinct in reports. April passed, and the case faded. Media moved to other topics: fuel prices, fishing season, Anchorage labor issues. In town, only a few occasionally mentioned Laura, elementary school colleagues, kept her photo in the classroom. Her parents called Dempsey monthly, hoping for news. He always replied the same, "We have no new leads." Early May, closing the quarterly summary, Dempsey flipped to his private notes and added Bennett case, retain all evidence. May need re-examination when technology allows. He couldn't know that keeping those small pieces, the glove, handwritten note, strange fingerprint on the door handle, would become pivotal decades later. But in 1976, they were just remnants of a simple disappearance, closed in silence, under Alaska's thick spring snow. After spring 1976, the Laura Bennett missing person file was stored in the Homer Police Department's cold metal cabinet, among dozens of accidents and other disappearances. The label, MP76214F, faded over time, the cover yellowed from winter humidity. Dempsey worked a few more years, but was pulled into new cases, boat thefts, domestic violence, other wilderness disappearances in the north. The Bennett case vanished from monthly reports, becoming just a name in old storage. No one asked about the young teacher who vanished in an Alaska blizzard that year. Thomas Bennett, the husband, sold their small Homer house in late 1977 and moved to Anchorage. He became a shop manager for a mechanical yard, living quietly, avoiding attention. 2 years later, he started dating Diane Walsh, a young nurse at Providence Hospital. They met when Thomas brought equipment for repair. Diane told friends he was calm, thoughtful, seemed to have suffered a great loss. The couple married in fall 1979, in a small ceremony, only close friends, no one from Laura's family. They soon moved to Anchorage suburbs, in a 2-story log home near Campbell Lake, where Thomas began what he called a peaceful life unconnected to the past. In Homer, memories of the disappearance faded. New elementary teachers heard vague stories of a teacher lost in a blizzard years ago. Laura's memorial photo gathered dust. Her aging parents occasionally wrote the new Homer chief, asking for updates, but answers were always the same. Nothing new. Dempsey retired in 1981, leaving Alaska for Oregon with family. Before handover, he reviewed all unresolved files, signing permanently archived on 11, including Bennett. In the inventory, next to MP76214F, he wrote briefly, "No body found, no suspects." That line officially ended any further review. In 1984, a minor event went unnoticed. Roger Hale, the initial Bennett suspect, died in a traffic accident on the Richardson Highway. His truck flipped avoiding reindeer, tumbling into a deep ravine, cab burned. Local papers ran a brief notice, and Homer police added a line, "Hale, questioned in 76214, now deceased." No reason to continue investigation. Hale's death ended any lingering doubts, though he had been cleared 8 years prior. That year, Homer police reorganized old files for transfer to the new county archive. Dusty folders were stamped, "Permanent storage, inactive." For Bennett, the clerk checked quickly. No new evidence, no re-examination requests, no supplemental reports. The file got a small black label, meaning fully closed. All evidence, from glove, handwritten note, to strange fingerprint, was stored in a sealed wooden box, 1970s stamps, placed deep in cold storage. By decade's end, Alaska entered an oil boom. Homer expanded its harbor, newcomers increased, and Laura's disappearance became a faint memory among the elderly. No memorial, no grave, no one mentioned her name at school meetings. In the 1985 County Police Statistical Report, the unrecovered missing persons section listed 43 cases. The 13th read simply, Laura Bennett. Female, 29. Homer, missing February, 1976, case closed. Thomas, by then, had 2 young children with Diane. They lived stably in Anchorage, occasionally visiting Diane's family in Fairbanks. Neighbors described them as private, low-key but friendly. No one knew or mentioned the first wife lost in a blizzard nearly 10 years earlier. By late 1986, When Kenai County's storage was first digitized, the data entry clerk noted file MP76214F as closed inactive. No one noticed Harold Dempsey's final handwritten note, "Scene shows signs of staging," was never entered into the electronic system. Those words, along with the photo of the snow-buried Jeep, lay silent in archived darkness for decades, awaiting a time no one thought would come. April 2012, Alaska entered melt season. Snow retreated from hillsides, exposing gray earth and gravel buried all winter. The Sterling Highway expansion project restarted after years of delays, and workers began grading a section near Beluga Lake, just over 2 miles from where Laura Bennett's Jeep was found. On the morning of April 18th, as a bulldozer pushed old soil for new asphalt, operator Gary Moritz saw a small metal glint in the overturned dirt. He stopped, picked it up, and recognized a silver ring, half buried in mud, engraved faintly, Laura B. Nearby, he found several white bone fragments mixed in damp soil, small but clearly human. Moritz immediately halted work and called Kenai County Police. The area was sealed within 2 hours. The Anchorage crime scene team was dispatched, led by Lieutenant Dana Rourke. They quickly cordoned, erected protective tents, and began careful excavation. Soft, wet post-melt soil eased the process, but risked damage to items. Digging down about half a meter, they uncovered nearly a full adult skeleton, curled on its side, partially wrapped in a nearly rotted wool blanket. Several dozen centimeters away were a pair of women's leather shoes and rusted metal scraps. The silver ring was collected as initial evidence, photographed, sealed, and sent to state lab. 2 days later, preliminary analysis determined the remains were a woman's, aged around 30 at death, height matching Laura Bennett's 1976 file description. The silver ring was cross-referenced. Dempsey's 1976 inventory noted, "Victim wore silver ring engraved LB, inner band May 8, 1971. Laura and Thomas Bennett's wedding date." The match prompted Homer Police to request reopening file MP76214F. For the first time in 36 years, Laura Bennett's name appeared in an official meeting. The Alaska State Forensics team sent all bone samples to the Fairbanks DNA lab. Thanks to technological advances, results returned in 2 weeks. Mitochondrial DNA matched 99.98% with Laura's biological mother, Helen Ward, now 83, living in Oregon. The report confirmed remains found near Beluga Lake belonged to Laura Bennett, missing 1976. Local media broke the news that evening, shocking Homer. The small town that thought the old story forgotten, current Chief Adam Keller issued a press release on May 3, 2012. "We are officially reopening the Laura Bennett case as cold case homicide. New details indicate the victim did not die from natural causes, as previously concluded. We will reinvestigate the entire matter." He declined specifics on skeletal condition, saying only unusual marks on the skull and arm bones. That night, a special investigation team was formed, coordinating Homer Police, Kenai Investigations, and Anchorage Forensics. They began reviewing all surviving documents, maps, scene photos, witness statements, and 1976 evidence. When evidence box B7 was opened, items remained intact in envelopes. The brown leather glove, handwritten note, "I'm afraid of him," fingerprint lift, copy, and carpet piece, with the dark streak noted unidentified. All were sent for modern DNA retesting. Preliminary results in days drew attention. The carpet streak, under fluorescence, was confirmed human blood, impossible to prove in 1976. Now they had clear basis that violence occurred in the Jeep. News spread rapidly across Alaska. Media revisited the mysterious 1976 disappearance. Anchorage TV replayed black and white graduation photos of Laura Bennett alongside the snow-buried Jeep image. Homer buzzed, "Why were remains just 2 miles from the vehicle, and why unseen for 36 years?" Some 1976 search participants recalled Beluga Lake area was fully frozen then, no access roads. The body may have been buried deep under ice, only exposed when 2012 roadwork dug into new ground. When the forensic report reached Keller's desk, he paused long at the conclusion. Cause of death, undetermined. However, fractures in skull and arm indicate possible strong impact before or at time of death. In the internal meeting, he said briefly, "We are no longer investigating a disappearance. This is a murder." The Laura Bennett file was reclassified and moved to cold case review under new code, CC 2012-04 LB. In Anchorage, Thomas Bennett, now 69 years old, received the official notice by mail. The police letter simply stated that his wife's remains had been found and invited him to cooperate in verifying certain information. He did not respond immediately. In Homer, those who knew Laura told reporters, "Finally, she has been found." But no one expected the discovery to trigger a chain of events, forcing the entire Alaska community to revisit a case thought to have been dormant for over 3 decades. Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey drove to Homer on a May 2012 morning, when winter snow had completely melted, to take over the case file coded CC 2012-04 LB. She was 37, working in the Alaska State Police Special Investigations Unit in Anchorage. But the reason she was chosen for this case was not just her ability. She was the daughter of the late Chief Harold Dempsey, the man who led the original 1976 investigation. When assigned, her superior said briefly, "No one understands that file better than you, and you might be the one to resolve it properly." Sarah did not reply, just nodded, then quietly left the office. In her hand was a yellowed copy of her father's file. Stepping into the Homer Police Department, she felt like stepping back in time. The narrow hallways, damp pine scent, and pale yellow light were just like in the old photos her father kept. Sarah began by requesting all original documents, evidence, and 1976 forensic reports from storage. Over 10 boxes filled the small back room. She gloved up, opened each file, taking meticulous notes. On the first page cover, her father's handwriting was still clear. "Missing person Laura Bennett, scene too neat." The note made Sarah pause for a long time. In the first 2 weeks, Sarah and her specialist team focused on reviewing the entire original file. They noticed many irregularities from the initial documentation. The Polaroid scene photos of the snow-buried Jeep had never been enlarged or technically analyzed. Unusual, as even then, standard procedure required at least measuring tire tracks and headlight direction. One enlarged photo revealed 2 strange parallel lines behind the vehicle, faint but not matching Jeep tracks. Sarah noted in the margin, "Possible second vehicle." Moving to administrative files, she found a little noticed document, a copy of a letter from national insurer North Pacific Life, dated March 3, 1976, just 3 weeks after Laura vanished. In it, Thomas Bennett requested death benefit payment, attaching a declaration of missing under unsurvivable conditions. What caught Sarah's attention was not Thomas filing, but the timing. Regulations then required at least 6 months for legal missing person declaration before claims. Why was the company accepting so early? She marked it in red, "Review insurance approval process." In the witness statement file, Sarah found Thomas Bennett's interrogation transcript recorded by Harold Dempsey. The original was typed, but at page end, she noticed sections crossed out in blue ballpoint, not her father's handwriting. Under "Time you knew wife was missing," typed, "Around 10 a.m. the next day, when Laura didn't return." But handwritten above added, "He began worrying the previous evening, around 9 p.m. The edit had no confirmation signature, no noted changer. Sarah sat still, staring long, then opened her personal notebook, writing briefly, "Thomas' statement shows manual edits, unverified." Reviewing evidence, Sarah found a series of documents misfiled. Forensic specialist Raymond Keller's report had 2 versions, original and copy. In the archived copy, conclusion read, "No signs of crime." But in the original, that line was added last, in different typewriter font, misaligned. The sentence, "Do not rule out another person at scene," was crossed out. Sarah tapped her pen on the desk, feeling a chill down her spine. She didn't know who edited, but clearly someone had tampered before 1976 closure. On May 20th, she briefed the investigation team. "We start over," she said. Trust no 1976 conclusions. Everything, photos, records, evidence, must be re-examined with current technology. Keller, now retired forensic tech, was consulted. Seeing Sarah, he sighed. Your father suspected from the start, but no one believed him then. The words confirmed the instinct Sarah carried since day one. The next day, she sent all evidence to state lab. Dried blood on carpet, hair, unidentified fingerprint, I'm afraid of him note, and wool blanket from remains. All recoded, transferred to Anchorage under special escort. She also requested Thomas Bennett's 1975-1977 financial and insurance records and contacted North Pacific Life to verify the unusual payment approver. In her end-of-month internal report, Sarah wrote, 1. Many original file documents show unclear edits. 2. Scene photos never technically analyzed. 3. Possible second vehicle at Jeep discovery site. 4. Unusual insurance payout timing. 5. Needful re-examination of stored biological evidence. At report end, she added a handwritten line, not printed. If Dad were alive, he would never let this close so soon. Then she set down the pen, looking out the window where snow-capped mountains reflected faint spring light. After 36 years, Laura Bennett's name returned to the investigation table. This time, in the hands of someone sharing blood with the man who wrote the file's first line, missing person female, 29 years old. Early June 2012, at Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey's request, Kenai District Court approved a search warrant for the Bennett's old Homer home. The two-story Cedar Street house now belonged to a young couple who bought it years earlier. When police arrived, they allowed forensic examination within limits. The house was little changed from 1976 file photos: pine facade, sloped roof, windows facing the sea. But inside, most paint and flooring was replaced, forcing the team to use modern tech for hidden traces. The Anchorage forensics team, led by Chief Technician Eric Lutz, brought infrared scanners and luminol solution capable of detecting blood cleaned decades ago. Sarah was on site, standing by the door, noting every step. Starting in the living room, they scanned walls, floors, kitchen. Nothing special beyond weak reactions possibly from old organics. But in the dining room, behind the kitchen, solid oak flooring, a technician saw the floor glow clearly under UV light. Lutz whispered, strong positive reaction. He sprayed luminol, turned off lights. Immediately, blue-green streaks spread in arcs under the wood, from table edge to old rug border, as if something spilled then wiped. The group fell silent. Sarah approached, staring at the fading glow. She ordered removal of that floor section. Beneath, wood was darker, deeply absorbed into grains, clearly once liquid-soaked. Samples were cut with specialized knives, sealed in glass tubes. Beyond the main area, they found two smaller spots near the wall, elongated drops, fallen from about 5 feet. No bullet marks, no heavy objects left, but everything indicated violent impact here. Samples were rushed to Anchorage DNA lab. Less than 10 days later, results returned. Floor blood matched 100%, with Laura Bennett's remains DNA. Attached was preliminary forensic biology analysis. Blood pattern not continuous drip, indicates acute injury, likely large open wound on head or upper body. The report kept Sarah glued to the final line. 100% confirmed match. The report was compared with Laura's skull analysis. It showed an 8-centimeter fracture in the occipital bone, from a narrow surface hard object, highly likely a blow from behind. Experts ruled out fall or vehicle crash, as fracture direction and depth matched only direct strike. Thus, Laura could not have died in a road accident. She was attacked before leaving home. In the Homer internal briefing, Sarah presented all results. The room was silent as she projected the scene photo, faint blue luminol glow spreading on wood, evidence her father never had a chance to see. An older officer, working there since the 1980s, whispered, "If this is true, she never left here alive." Sarah just nodded, eyes on the image. She ordered full ground floor expansion. In the kitchen, forensics found a small glass shard wedged under a cabinet with dark brown residue. Under microscope, it was from a glass likely holding liquid before breaking. Chemical analysis showed caffeine traces, matching Laura's usual coffee. Lutz noted, high likelihood victim attacked while preparing drink. Sarah stood in that room all afternoon. Summer light through windows illuminated old wood, faintly restoring a past image. Young woman bent over table, door opening, a quick precise blow from behind, then absolute silence. Afterward, the perpetrator wiped floors, hid blood, reset everything. Neat enough for 1976 police to believe she simply vanished en route home. End of day, Sarah wrote the Anchorage report. 1. Bennett home floor shows strong luminol positive blood. 2. DNA 100% matches, Laura Bennett remains. 3. Skull injury and blood pattern indicate strong rear blow. 4. Preliminary conclusion. Violence occurred at residence before body moved to discovery site. The report was signed, sent to state prosecutor with proposal to change case status from cold case to active homicide investigation. In her notebook, Sarah added a private line, not in records. Dad was right. 1976 scene was not natural. It was staged to fool everyone. Leaving the house that day, she looked back at the ground floor dining window. Sunset through white curtains, and for a moment, she imagined a woman's shadow standing there, face half turned toward her, eyes silent, waiting 36 years to see the truth. Noon, June 12, 2012. As the old home scene examination ended, Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey received a report from the Anchorage legal audit team on Laura Bennett's 1976 insurance file. Among old documents was a copy of the death benefit claim form, supposedly signed by Laura before disappearance, submitted by Thomas Bennett to North Pacific Life, for the $50,000 payout. Dempsey ordered full re-examination of the set, including original declaration, notarized copy, and payment approval letter. The examination team, led by criminal document expert Michael Tran, compared the Laura Bennett signature on the insurance form with authentic samples from bank records, driver's license, and 1975 handwritten letters. Preliminary results in 2 days showed clear differences. Insurance form strokes were stiff, uniformly angled, lacking Laura's soft light endings. Under microscope, Tran saw hand tremor, common in signature forgery attempts. He noted, insurance document signature not natural, shows manual forgery signs. But more notable was the form content. Type text used Smith Corona Classic 12 font 2 font, common 1970s U.S. mechanical typewriter, but with a distinct trait, the R key slightly right-shifted and deeper imprint. Reviewing old files, Sarah recalled Thomas Bennett owned a Smith Corona, mentioned in his 1976 police asset list. She immediately requested the original machine. After contacts, it was still in the Bennett home's antique storage, kept by new owners. June 15th, the Smith Corona arrived at the lab. Comparing the old insurance form typing with test samples from the machine, results matched perfectly, same spacing, slant, and R imprint error. Examination report stated, death insurance document typed on Smith Corona Classic 12, matching machine owned by Thomas Bennett. Sarah read it, silent for a long time. The machine, an ordinary household item, now evidenced the document was likely prepared at the murder scene. But the key point went further. Analyzing the form paper, materials expert found it manufactured in 1977, based on changed embedded cellulose marker that year, meaning the insurance claim could not have been created before Laura vanished, as Thomas claimed. It was made after. Sarah requested North Pacific Life internal processing records. In archived digital copies, they found a 1976 appraiser's handwritten note, margin comment, client submitted in person, full file, original insured signature. The Laura Bennett signature on that note, per Tran's examination, matched the form, meaning forged. This proved Thomas not only filed untimely, but used fake signature to legitimize. June 18, Sarah presented the synthesis report to state prosecutor. She listed 1. Laura Bennett's signature on death insurance claim is forged. 2. Entire form typed on equipment owned by Thomas Bennett. 3. Paper manufactured at least 1 year after Laura's disappearance. 4. Claim submission shows intentional post-disappearance document creation. An emergency meeting was held that afternoon. As prosecutors reviewed evidence, the room air thickened. One said, "If this isn't forgery, I don't know what is." Sarah replied briefly, "He prepared more thoroughly than we thought." That evening, in her small office, Sarah laid out 2 sheets of paper on the desk, a photo of Laura's genuine signature on a 1975 check, and an enlarged photo of the forged signature on the insurance form. Between the 2 sheets, she placed an old note from her father, "Do not rule out staging." She stared at the words for a long time, then whispered, "Dad, I think we're about to find out what he staged." When the official examination report was sent up the following week, expert Tran's bold conclusion turned all doubts into certainty. The Laura Bennett death insurance document is an intentionally forged product, prepared and falsely signed, using means owned by the husband, Thomas Bennett. With this result, the Laura Bennett case officially shifted from homicide with unknown perpetrator to premeditated murder with accompanying financial fraud. For the first time in 36 years, the scattered evidence from 1976 began connecting into a clear picture, a story of sophisticated staging buried under Alaska's thick snow for over 3 decades. Late June 2012, as the forged signature examination results were announced, Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey decided to shift the investigation focus to fully reconstructing the Jeep Wagoneer's movement route on the night Laura Bennett vanished. She believed that proving the vehicle was not abandoned randomly, but driven deliberately, would collapse the 1976 blizzard disappearance hypothesis. Alaska's Cold Case Unit was mobilized in full force. Under Sarah's direction, the task force included terrain engineers, traffic scene reconstruction specialists, and 2 former patrol pilots who served the Sterling Highway area in the 1970s. The work began by digitizing all 1976 topographic maps, collecting National Weather Service meteorological data and wind speed records for the night of February 12, the time Laura was presumed missing. Combining the data, specialists determined maximum wind gusts were only about 38 miles per hour, strong but insufficient to blow a vehicle over 2 tons like the Jeep Wagoneer. Additionally, snowfall was intermittent, not continuous, meaning driving conditions remained feasible. Dempsey reread her father's 1976 conclusion about vehicles stuck due to storm, then underlined blizzard in her notebook, replacing it with controlled movement. From the evidence locker, they retrieved the 1976 Polaroid scene photos, never technically analyzed. The images were digitized and processed with modern geometric analysis software. When enhancing contrast in the snow background behind the vehicle, technicians discovered parallel indentations running sideways to the road edge, about 1 meter from the tail. One of the 2 lines was deeper, even, and extended to the rim where snow was depressed. Under reflection, they did not match Jeep tires, which were wider with diagonal treads. The scene engineer compared the indentation shape to 1975, 1976 pickup truck tire samples and found width and tread spacing matched Firestone F100 tires. Common on Ford F-Series trucks, the exact type Thomas Bennett owned at the time. Dempsey was silent reading the comparison report. In the original file, Thomas stated he was home that night. His truck parked in the garage all evening. Now, evidence showed at least his vehicle was at the scene area, something 1976 missed because snow covered traces before the search team arrived. For confirmation, the Cold Case Unit conducted a simulation test. They used a same-era Jeep Wagoneer with equivalent weight, placed on terrain reconstructed to February 12, 1976, meteorological data. Results showed, if wind pushed or skidded, tire tracks would be misaligned and often sideways before stopping. But in scene photos, Laura's vehicle was perfectly straight, nose parallel to the road, front wheels even, only possible if manually driven, not weather drifted. Moreover, the parking brake was engaged, and gear in P. One specialist commented, the driver knew exactly what they were doing. They pulled the vehicle off the road, stopped carefully to look like a breakdown, then left. Dempsey noted immediately, vehicle not skidded, placed. To reinforce, Sarah requested archived weather satellite images and had terrain survey engineers analyze the mile 64 road slope. Incline was only 3%, insufficient for self-rolling. Based on combined terrain, wind direction and wheel position, the team concluded the Jeep was deliberately driven to that spot. Very likely the night Laura died, then abandoned to create a fake roadside disappearance scene. In the mid-July results briefing, a reconstruction specialist presented simulated graphics, routes starting from the Bennett home in Homer, north, to mile 64. About 18 miles equivalent to 25 minutes driving. The model showed the vehicle stopped at a spot with enough clearing to turn a truck around, rare on the narrow highway. Everything matched the hypothesis. The perpetrator transported the body by truck, placed her in the Jeep, drove to the preset location, then left in their own vehicle. The final evidence came from an unexpected source, a 1976 color photo found in the Anchorage Daily News archive. It captured the rescue team at the Jeep scene, and in the far corner of the frame, faint but clear, were larger tire marks than the Jeep's, leading away from the scene. When enlarged, technicians confirmed they were F-Series truck marks, Firestone tires matching Thomas Bennett's vehicle. Sarah held the photo, feeling the circle close. 36 years earlier, her father wrote in his notebook's final line, "Vehicle found in too perfect condition, suspicious." Now, she had the answer to that suspicion. At the end of the cold case unit's 27-page report, the conclusion was bold. Victim Laura Bennett's Jeep Wagoneer was deliberately moved and placed. Tire marks and scene structure completely rule out weather-related accident. Tracks match vehicle owned by Thomas Bennett. Sarah signed under the confirmation, then looked through the glass where summer light shone on remaining snow atop the mountains. For her, the case was no longer distant past. What was buried for decades was emerging, layer by layer, trace by trace, and all pointed to one person. Mid-July 2012, as the route reconstruction results were announced, Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey received an unexpected call from Anchorage. The voice on the line introduced briefly, "I'm Diane Walsh, Thomas Bennett's second wife. I think it's time I tell you a few things." The woman's voice trembled but was resolute. She requested an in-person meeting at the investigator's office, not over the phone. 2 days later, Diane appeared, slim build, graying hair, eyes mixed with fear and relief. She had lived with Thomas over 30 years, and now, after news of Laura's remains discovery spread in the media, that marriage had crumbled. "He moved out last week," Diane said. "But before leaving, I found some things I think you should see." Sarah brought her into the interview room. Diane placed an old black-covered notebook on the table, corners worn, then opened the first page. It was her personal diary written sporadically throughout the marriage. Early pages recorded daily life, children, hospital work, but starting spring 1999, the tone changed. Anxious, tense, full of implication. On the page dated March 14 that year, Diane wrote, "Snow melting early, Tom not sleeping. He went out at night, said to check water pipes, but morning I saw him washing mud off truck tires." Another entry, April 2003, "He dreamed of Laura again, said she was cold, lost. When he woke he vomited in the bathroom. I asked if he wanted a doctor. He was silent, then left the house." Sarah flipped to later pages. Entries were scattered but shared a pattern. Every melt season, exactly when Laura's remains were finally found, Thomas became distraught, irritable, often driving for hours without telling anyone. In a 2008 page, Diane wrote, "He said if someone digs up the old road near Beluga Lake, everything will end." Sarah paused at this line, eyes flashing. When asked, Diane said Thomas never detailed Laura's death, but over years, he made contradictory statements. He told me she vanished in a blizzard, then maybe she left on her own. But once drunk, he whispered, Laura never left Alaska. She's still there. Diane teared up recalling. I think he said it unconsciously, but whenever I asked, he got angry, said never mention her name again. Sarah asked why she was speaking now. Diane was silent long, then replied, because I read you found her ring. I knew, in my heart, he was waiting for that. This past month, he said nonsense. That everything is surfacing, that they'll come knocking. I don't want to stay silent anymore. Diane's diary was sealed as evidence. The criminal psychology analysis team reviewed and determined it was key behavioral evidence, clearly showing Thomas's prolonged fear of truth exposure. They concluded his reactions, insomnia, melt season avoidance, victim dreams, matched latent guilt signs after concealment. In the report, the specialist wrote, diary shows individual Thomas Bennett carried recurring fear of victim body rediscovery, only possible if directly involved in burial location. Beyond the diary, Diane provided one small but valuable detail. She recalled in 1983, when moving from Homer to Anchorage, Thomas insisted on taking an old metal box, not letting anyone touch it. Inside, he said, were work documents. She never saw it opened. When police asked where the box was now, Diane said it was still in the old Anchorage home garage. Sarah immediately requested a search warrant to seize this evidence. In the interview transcript, Sarah recorded 47 minutes of exchange, every question and answer carefully taped. At the end, she asked, do you believe Thomas killed his wife? Diane bowed her head, voice softening. I don't know, but I know he lived his whole life, fearing something, and I believe that something was her. That evening, Sarah reread every diary page, marking recurring behavior sections. She recognized a clear pattern. Thomas became unstable each spring when ice melted around Beluga Lake, where Laura's body was found. In her prosecutor report, she wrote 1. Diane Walsh's statement shows Thomas Bennett made multiple contradictory claims about first wife's death. 2. Personal diary proves fear when mentioning melt season, matching remains discovery site. 3. Behavior and psychology consistent with guilt-burdened individual. Report conclusion, Diane Walsh's statement provides psychological element reinforcing Thomas Bennett's motive and concealment behavior. When Sarah signed the document, she knew the case had passed the suspicion phase. Now, it was not just physical evidence, but human testimony, vivid, confirming that for 36 years, one man carried the fear that an Alaska spring would one day bring the truth up from the ice. 1 week after Diane Walsh surrendered the diary, the investigation team re-examined all old evidence in the Homer Police Department storage, where hundreds of dusty file boxes had sat for decades. Sarah Dempsey was personally present for the inventory. She wanted to ensure no detail from her father's case was missed. The cold room, gray concrete walls, fluorescent lights casting on metal shelves labeled with case numbers. In the third cabinet corner, a small wooden box marked 76 HR 214B was listed as item seized from Bennett home, not directly related. No one had reopened it since April 1976. Sarah ordered the box brought to the examination table. The lid was secured with a rusted old lock, requiring pliers to break open. Inside were only a few odds and ends, a broken watch, electrical wire coil, an old steel head hammer with dark wooden handle. What caught her attention immediately were 3 letters carved on the handle back. T. Knife-etched, deep, clear. Under the light, the hammer head gleamed with brownish rust. A forensic technician ran a quick scanner and said, positive for iron protein, likely blood trace. The room went silent. Sarah stared at the hammer long, then ordered, seal it, transfer to Anchorage lab. Highest priority processing. 2 days later, the sample was under an electron microscope at the Alaska State Forensics Lab. Grooves in the hammerhead still held tiny dried brown residue, enough for DNA extraction. Using modern protocols, technicians obtained a complete DNA sequence. When compared to Laura Bennett's remains data, results showed absolute match. The report was rushed to Homer with bold conclusion, Biological sample on hammer handle belongs to victim Laura Bennett. Random match probability 1 in 10 billion. Beyond the blood, the team analyzed the hammer's mechanical geometry. Square steel head, about 0.9 kilograms, typical for mechanical repairs. They cross-referenced shape, size, and impact angle with Laura's skull CT scans. Results left everyone speechless. Occipital depression width, 4.8 centimeters, near perfect match to hammerhead. Fracture depth and force direction also matched a rear blow, 25 centimeters above victim head, position corresponding to a man of Thomas Bennett's height. The 32-page technical report concluded, injury-causing object highly likely mechanical steel head hammer, shape and size identical to evidence marked TB. Sarah read the results in silence. She knew she held the first clear, undeniable physical evidence, something her father searched for throughout months in 1976. She immediately convened a meeting with state prosecutors. On the table, she spread the examinations, blood under home floor, skull fracture and hammer photo with deep carved TB. Everything points to one person, she said. The only one with financial motive, opportunity and mean. Chief Prosecutor Robert Miller, after reviewing, said briefly, "We have the murder weapon." For the first time since the file reopened, the words rang in the quiet meeting room like confirmation. Miller requested hammer origin verification. The 1976 evidence log noted, mechanical hammer, seized from Bennett garage, no related signs. Stored. Clearly, at the time no one tested or suspected because there was no body. The hammer was kept simply as personal property. That coincidence now became pivotal. Sarah cross-referenced the faint serial number on the handle with purchase records. An old invoice found in Thomas's asset documents stated, purchased at Homer Hardware, October 1975, 2 pounds mechanical hammer, True Temper brand. The buyer's signature on the invoice was Thomas Bennett's. To reinforce, the forensic analysis team created a digital reconstruction model. Based on the average striking force of a 0.9 kilograms object and human skull curvature, they simulated the blow trajectory. Results matched Laura's injury exactly. 47-degree angle from rear to right, force source height, corresponding to a 5'10" inches person. Thomas Bennett was 5'10.5, no significant deviations. On July 28, Sarah presented all evidence in an internal Anchorage meeting. The enlarged hammer photo was placed in the table center, cold steel reflecting under lights. Beside it was the victim's skull photo, long fracture running like undeniable proof. 36 years ago, Sarah said slowly. They thought she vanished in a blizzard, but the truth is, she died right in her own home. And this, she pointed to the hammer, is what killed her. Prosecutor Miller nodded, signing confirmation to include the evidence in the official charge list. In the updated file, the conclusion read, 1. Steel head hammer engraved TB, seized from Bennett home. Identified as murder weapon. 2. Blood sample on handle matches victim Laura Bennett's DNA. 3. Impact geometry fully matches skull injury. 4. Evidence sufficient to establish intentional homicide. That evening, Sarah stayed alone in the office, looking at the hammer in the evidence display case. On the wooden handle top, the 3 deeply carved letters, TB, remained clear, despite time's discoloration. She touched the glass, whispering almost to herself. Finally, Dad, we found it. In that moment, all 4 months of reinvestigation efforts condensed into one thought. Nothing was missing anymore, only the truth, restored from Alaska's cold ice. Early August 2012, after over 4 months of reinvestigation, evidence was strong enough to charge Thomas Bennett. The over 300-page synthesis report by Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey, sent to the Alaska State Prosecutor's Office, was evaluated as complete, systematic, and highly prosecutable. It included all DNA examinations, forged signature, route reconstruction, and weapon evidence converging on one conclusion. Laura Bennett's death was no accident, but a sophisticated staged murder. On August 6, Chief Prosecutor Robert Miller signed the official request to arrest Thomas Bennett on 2 counts: second-degree murder and tampering with criminal evidence. Sarah was present when the Anchorage District Judge approved the warrant the next morning. The warrant stated, based on modern forensic examinations, new witnesses, and seized physical evidence, reasonable grounds exist to identify Thomas Bennett as perpetrator in the 1976 homicide of Laura Bennett. At the time, Thomas lived in South Anchorage suburbs in the 2-story log home his ex-wife Diane had left the previous month. Police confirmed he was often home, in stable health, no flight signs. 6 a.m. on August 8th, a 4-officer investigation team approached the house. Alaska summer still had mist, chill from Campbell Lake in the air. When they knocked, Thomas opened in a gray sweater, surprised mixed with fatigue. Sarah stepped forward, reading aloud. Thomas Bennett, you are under arrest by order of Anchorage District Court on charges of second-degree murder and evidence tampering related to your wife Laura Bennett's 1976 death. He stood still, no reaction, only asking softly, 36 years for this. Sarah did not reply, signaling colleagues to cuff him. During the search, police seized old papers, the Smith Corona typewriter, now key evidence, and personal items. Thomas was taken to Anchorage Police Headquarters for preliminary questioning before state detention transfer. When given statement rights, he said briefly, "I didn't kill anyone. They've got it all wrong." His voice unusually calm, but eyes tired, deeply sunken. That afternoon, a press conference was held in Anchorage. Prosecutor Miller announced to media, based on DNA examinations, scene-seized evidence, victim signature forgery documents, and new witness statements, we believe Thomas Bennett intentionally caused his wife's death and staged the scene to conceal the crime. He confirmed the indictment included 2 main counts: second-degree murder for intentional but unpremeditated act, and criminal evidence tampering for creating fake insurance file and moving vehicle to mislead. In the prosecution file, Sarah's argument was quoted verbatim: physical, biological, and psychological behavioral evidence all point one direction. The killer never left Alaska. He lived among us for 36 years. These lines quickly appeared on the Anchorage Daily News front page the next morning. Beside a 1974 black and white photo of Laura Bennett, her young smile now symbolizing a case resolved after nearly 4 decades. Thomas was held at Anchorage County Jail, awaiting preliminary hearing. He was allowed to call his private attorney and refused further police questions. Leaving the interrogation room, Sarah watched the man once seen by the town as kind and devoted walk slowly, head bowed, hands bound. In her investigation notebook, she wrote one short line: "Arrest warrant, executed August 8, 2012. Subject non-resistant." That evening, she received a call from Prosecutor Miller. "Sarah, the case is now state court jurisdiction. You did the hardest part." But Sarah knew it was just beginning. Evidence was clear, but justice required a long trial. Still, looking at the final record, arrest warrant executed. August 8, 2012, she felt part of the history her father left unfinished was finally closed. The 1976 snow disappearance was no longer a mystery, but officially named murder. Immediately after Thomas Bennett's arrest, the Alaska State Prosecutor's Office requested the Anchorage Forensic Lab conduct a comprehensive synthesis analysis series to fully reconstruct the entire crime process. This was seen as crucial to strengthen the prosecution file, especially for a 1976 case, a rare technical and evidence preservation challenge. Under Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey's supervision, an 11-member forensic expert team was assigned categories: DNA samples, soil and mud, fabric fibers, blood traces, and physical scene cross-referencing. The goal was a provable crime sequence linking time, location, and actions. 1. DNA and original evidence analysis. Biological samples were recollected from multiple sources: blood on hammer handle, dining room floor blood, skull fragments from Laura's remains, and mud in Jeep Wagoneer tires, all cross-referenced in one STR and mitochondrial DNA examination chain. Results: hammer and floor blood fully matched victim Laura Bennett's DNA, with no third-party DNA signs. This ruled out external intrusion and confirmed the assault location was inside the home, not on the road or in the vehicle, as old records noted. 2. Soil and mud traces. Mud samples on Jeep tires, preserved sealed since 1976, were analyzed via geochemical isotope and mineralogy methods. Results showed 98% match with soil from South Beluga Lake Rim, 14 miles from Bennett home. This reinforced the hypothesis the body was buried at the lake immediately after the crime, and the vehicle driven reverse toward Kenai to fake a heading home scene. Timing matched 1976 weather data. Thick snow and strong winds on February 12 night made vehicle movement and trace erasure feasible. 3. Fabric fiber and micro-trace analysis. On the Jeep back seat, technicians found 2 dark fibers, structure and color matching Bennett dining room curtains. Under electron microscope, fibers showed strong friction breaks, likely adhering during heavy object movement, highly probable the body. A red wool fiber fragment in the vehicle glove box matched Laura's sweater in her last photo before leaving parents in Kenai. These fabric traces physically linked home, victim and vehicle. 3 case pivots. 4. Blood spatter and trajectory examination. The lab used 3D spatial reconstruction based on scene photos and blood pattern simulation via forensics software. Results showed dining room wall blood spatter in a fan shape, 46-degree angle, matching rear to right blow trajectory, consistent with victim position when attacked. Small blood drops on rear doormat indicated body dragged immediately after, not collapsed on spot. A 1.7-meter drag trail was recreated in simulation, leading from dining room to backyard, exactly the garage position where the hammer was found. This proved Laura was killed in the home, then dragged to the vehicle. 5. Time of death examination. Based on remains decomposition and 1976 weather data, forensic experts estimated death between evening February 12 and early morning February 13, matching the night Laura planned driving from Kenai to Homer. The report stated, based on bone tissue freezing degree and soil precipitate, victim died at least 6 hours before body placed outdoors. This eliminated death in vehicle or en route. She died in the home before the Jeep was driven. 6. Crime sequence reconstruction. From analysis results, the team built a hypothetical event sequence. Evening February 12, 1976. Laura returned home after visiting parents in Kenai. Argument between spouses. In dining room, Thomas struck Laura hard on the head from behind with mechanical hammer, causing instant death. After the act, he dragged the body to the Jeep, temporarily wrapped in blanket, then drove to Beluga Lake area, remote, low traffic. He dug a shallow grave, buried the body with Laura's purse, then returned driving the vehicle reverse, staging a blizzard disappearance scene. En route back, he stuck the vehicle in snow, opened the door, turned off engine, walked home. Next morning, he reported wife not home yet. 7. Spatial and temporal logic, cross-reference. When all data, DNA, soil, fibers, blood direction were aligned, the case picture emerged unified. Death time, assault location, movement route, and body discovery site matched perfectly logically. Vehicle mud fit Beluga Lake stratigraphy. Home blood matched fatal injury. Curtain fibers matched vehicle. No details contradicted Thomas as sole perpetrator. In the 78-page synthesis report, the team led concluded, synthesis of physical, biological, geological, and mechanical evidence shows Laura Bennett's death resulted from intentional hammer attack in her residence. Body was manually moved to Beluga Lake area and vehicle driven to simulate weather accident. All data unified in time, space, and action. Sarah finished reading, closed the file. She felt a heavy mix of burden and remorse, one part because this was her father's unfinished case, another because every page documented a crime hidden in ice and snow for 3 decades. But investigation-wise, this examination series closed all remaining logic gaps. Now, the case had not just a suspect, but a precise scientific story recreating that 1976 winter night when a woman vanished from America's map and the truth was buried under Alaska's cold ice. Thomas Bennett's trial began morning November 12, 2012, at Anchorage Superior Court. Alaska media called it the Snowfield Widow Case, the 1976 blizzard disappeared wife, now clarified by modern forensics. The large courtroom was packed, back rows filled with local paper and national TV reporters. Before the judge declared opening, snow fell thick outside the window, as if deliberately recreating that night's scene. Chief Prosecutor Robert Miller presented the opening. He stood before the 12-person jury, speaking slowly. 36 years ago, we believed Laura Bennett was swallowed by a blizzard, but today, science says she was killed in her home by the person she trusted most, and that person lived among us all that time. After the opening, prosecution presented all evidence, piece by piece, like bricks rebuilding the full truth. First was DNA results. Reports showed hammer and dining room floor blood, absolute match to victim DNA. Next, Jeep tire soil, proven from Beluga Lake area, where remains were found. Bennett home curtain fibers matched vehicle. Geometric examination confirmed rear blow 25 centimeters above victim head, matching Thomas's height. And finally, the murder weapon, the steel head hammer engraved. TB, everyone saw in the display case. Prosecution also presented the forgery chain, death insurance file, typed on Thomas-owned Smith Corona, Laura Bennett's signature traced copy, file submitted 10 days after disappearance. A 1976 internal note from Chief Harold Dempsey was read. Scene shows staging signs, however, lacking basis for charge. Robert Miller looked down at Sarah Dempsey's row, daughter of the chief, like closing a prior generation's unfinished legacy. When the prosecution called Diane Walsh, Thomas's second wife, to the witness stand, the courtroom fell silent. Diane recounted in a choked voice, every melt season, he couldn't sleep. He often left the house at night, saying he had to check the pipes. I knew he wasn't sleeping, because he was afraid. She submitted the diary recording Thomas's nightmares and the haunting words. Laura is still there. The prosecution concluded this was an unconscious confession. The defense, led by Edward Graham, attempted to counter by denying the directness of the evidence. He said, no witness saw Mr. Bennett kill his wife. No one witnessed the body being moved. Everything is inference after 36 years. He also argued that the blood samples could be minor household injuries and that the wife's DNA in her husband's home is natural. Regarding the insurance file, Graham said, the retyping could have been done by insurance office staff, not necessarily by my client. However, Prosecutor Miller's rebuttal quickly dismantled it. He presented an enlarged image of the hammer, comparing every detail. This is not a household injury. This is a fatal blow causing occipital fracture, only possible with deliberate force. He also pointed to the soil isotope report. Mud on the vehicle could not appear naturally in Homer City. It belongs to Beluga Lake, where the victim was buried. And who was the only one who could take her there? The courtroom was silent. Thomas Bennett sat in the defendant's chair, arms crossed, eyes coldly calm. He showed no reaction to any evidence, only occasionally turning to his lawyer, nodding slightly. Sarah Dempsey sat in the prosecution assistant row, observing every detail, face composed but eyes full of restraint. On the 8th day of the trial, the prosecution played a 3D simulation of the crime process based on the forensic examination chain. The reconstruction images projected on the large screen, Laura entering the dining room, turning, the blow from behind striking down, the metallic sound echoed dryly in the courtroom. Some spectators turned away. Miller only said, "This is what happened," and no blizzard could erase it. The defense tried to close with an appeal to mercy. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we are trying a 73-year-old man, with no prior record, no longer capable of harm. Let him live his remaining years in peace. But the prosecution responded coldly, "Justice has no expiration date. A crime buried under ice for 30 years is still a crime." Afternoon of November 23rd, the judge instructed the jury to deliberate. They took all files, evidence, and examination reports. Outside, Anchorage darkened early. Over 7 hours later, at 9:46 p.m., they returned to the courtroom. Heavy atmosphere enveloped. Only the faint sound of the clerk's pen. The jury foreperson stood, voice clear. "We, the jury of the Alaska Superior Court, find the defendant Thomas Bennett guilty of second-degree murder and tampering with criminal evidence." The courtroom was silent for a few seconds, then buzzed with whispers. Thomas sat motionless, only slightly tilting his head, lips pressed tight. Sarah closed her eyes, gripping her hands on the table, not from joy, but knowing justice came too late. The judge declared the trial ended at 10:05 p.m. He said briefly, "After 36 years, Alaska has an answer for an unfinished winter." The hammer-engraved TB was once again displayed on the evidence table, like a period ending a story buried too long in snow. The sentencing hearing took place morning of December 18, 2012, at Anchorage Court. Sky gray, light snow on stone steps. Inside the courtroom, thick, silent air. Thomas Bennett entered in orange prison jumpsuit, slow gait but head held high. When the judge read the sentence, he showed no emotion. Defendant Thomas Bennett is sentenced to 25 years imprisonment for second-degree murder and an additional 5 years for criminal evidence tampering, to run concurrently, total 25 years. The judge continued, voice calm. "The court finds you concealed the crime for over 3 decades, forcing the victim's family to live in doubt and deception. Today's penalty is not just for the crime, but for the stolen time." Thomas remained silent. When asked if he wished final words, he only replied, "I did not kill my wife. I was wrong to stay silent, but I am not the murderer." The words rang dry, then dissolved in the unresponsive room. Below, Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey sat with the cold case team, eyes fixed on the file before her. She had heard hundreds of denials, but knew no innocent person forges a dead woman's signature. After sentencing, the Alaska Police Department officially released the case summary report, over 180 pages, titled MP 76-214F, Case Review and Forensic Reconstruction. In the introduction, the cold case lead wrote, "The primary goal of reinvestigation was not only to identify the perpetrator, but to evaluate why the 1976 case closed prematurely." The report detailed initial investigation shortcomings, what Sarah always saw as a prior generation's debt. First error, incomplete scene analysis. At the time, DNA technology did not exist, and investigators relied on visual observation. The report noted the dark stain under the dining room floor was dismissed as coffee, not tested. If that sample had been collected, the case could have ended in 1976. The summary wrote. Second error, misjudged motive and relationship. Investigators then believed Thomas Bennett was a model husband with social standing, so not suspect listed. The report commented, bias toward the good citizen image weakened objective reasoning. Third error, improper evidence handling. Many items seized from the Bennett home lacked detailed inventory, including the hammer-engraved TB, later decisive evidence. The cold case unit proposed using this case as 2013 training material, a classic example of long-term evidence retention importance. The report conclusion stated, 1. Based on biological, physical, and behavioral evidence, Laura Bennett's death is determined premeditated homicide. 2. Murder weapon is steelhead hammer engraved TB, seized from victim's home. 3. Victim's body manually moved to Beluga Lake to stage disappearance scene. 4. Case fully resolved by scientific evidence, no direct witnesses. 5. File, MP 76-214F, officially updated status. Solved. December 21st, at Anchorage Police Headquarters, the cold case unit held the final case meeting. In the small conference room, old and new investigators signed the file closure record. Sarah signed last. When the pen stopped on her signature, She exhaled long. Beside her, the forensic tech lead whispered, 36 years to rewrite a truth, but at least now we know exactly what happened. Sarah replied softly. And know who kept my father from ever resting easy. The file was stored in the central electronic database, marked with bold red text. Solved, 2012. On the final page, Sarah's note had one brief line, case reopened in April 2012, by request of Cold Case Unit. Justice served December 2012. It was not just the end of an investigation file, but closure for a generation of police living with the obsession named Laura Bennett. That afternoon, snow covered Anchorage rooftops. Sarah stood by the window, looking down at the empty parking lot, thinking of the woman who vanished in the 1976 blizzard. In her imagination, she saw the Kenai Homer Road again, Jeep lights flickering in wind and snow, and a man returning home, pretending worry. 36 years later, everything returned to its place. Victim named, killer named by crime. That evening, she took the original file home, the first print from her father, now yellowed. On the cover, the handwritten MP70-6214 glared, but below she added in blue pen, solved, 2012. Then, she placed it back in the drawer, closing gently, like closing the final echo of that winter. The story of the Laura Bennett case in Homer, Alaska, is not just a family tragedy, but proof of how truth can be buried and unearthed through science, persistence, and professional ethics. 36 years, from Laura's disappearance in the 1976 snow night to truth revealed in 2012, was long enough for a community to forget. But in that silence, a new generation, represented by Lieutenant Sarah Dempsey, daughter of the original investigator, proved justice can be delayed, but never vanishes. This story reflects a deep value in modern American society, faith in the legal system and its self-correction ability. In modern life, where technology and data dominate every field, the Bennett case reminds us technical progress only matters when combined with human responsibility. Without someone keeping a small evidence box, without someone rereading the note, scene shows staging signs, all machines and DNA analysis software would be meaningless. The story is a reminder to every individual, from police to ordinary citizens, that every small action can help protect truth. In today's American society, when institutional trust is often challenged, this case becomes a mirror for transparency spirit, for the belief that justice delayed is not justice denied, and perhaps the greatest lesson Americans can draw is never let silence prolong to become complicity, because justice only exists when someone dares continue seeking it, even when snow has blanketed all memory. Thank you for following to the end of the story about Alaska's coldest case, where justice was found after 36 years buried under ice and snow. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring cases thought forgotten, but still waiting to be retold in the next video.